I think more interesting than the headline figures is what's actually happening to the global economy. And in the last 3 years, I just think that the pace of change under what looks like a relatively stable exterior is extraordinary, and the shifts are extraordinary. And I think technology is what's causing that. The pace of digital swallowing the physical and at times melding with the physical is really astounding. The instant demand economy, the rate of adoption of that is astounding. And I think what that leads to is huge productivity gains, huge competitive pressures that are keeping inflation effectively zero around the world, and we don't see that changing anytime soon. And now, because of ubiquitous distribution and because millennials in particular are acting so differently, it does feel almost at times like it's a disadvantage to be big, that being disruptive and using using these big secular shifts in the global economy to your advantage are enormous entrant advantages and incumbent disadvantages. So all of that, what looks like a relatively steady and low volatility global economy is actually an economy that's shifting dramatically right out under our feet. Undoubtedly, there are challenges, but it is net a huge opportunity. I think for us as a digital company, and particularly as an e-commerce company, Asia is obviously not one market, but there are a few common attributes. It's almost a perfect storm setting up growth in e-commerce. You've got a high adoption of technology. In particular, you've got an entire generation that's moving straight to mobile devices. They're skipping a generation of desktops and laptops like most Western economies went through. You've got growing wealth, and you've got supply and demand imbalances, which is usually a precipitator for e-commerce. You've got cities where wealth is growing, and there may be supply in those cities, but then you've got more rural areas where they don't have access to the goods that they want. And that's what e-commerce does. Ultimately, e-commerce uses technology to mediate between supply and demand imbalances. So overall, we're looking at enormous opportunities in Asia, and those aren't futures, those are currents. For us, having in particular had a major cyber attack in 2014, I mean, this is my number one priority. I wish it wasn't. But what's clear is that security is a battle that you always fight and you never win. And what's interesting to me is with the growing importance of digital as it swallows the global economy, this becomes a looming mega threat to that development. The last time there was such an existential shift in the economy, the Industrial Revolution, it was the roads, the bridges, the infrastructure that made that work. It was the ability to move physical manufactured goods. Imagine in that world if none of that was secure, if you didn't trust trucks on the roads or ships at sea or railroads. The economy wouldn't have developed. It was built on the security and safety of the physical infrastructure. Today, that infrastructure is digital, but it's no less important. As a digital company, we do a lot of experimentation. Just to make an example, at any given time, about 40% of our global websites are in a test, even though they may not know they're in a test. So thinking that we have 160 million people, we've got tens of millions of people at any time in tests without necessarily knowing it. So the culture of testing is deeply embedded in us as an internet company. When you're running a company that is profitable and successful, and you're trying to make a lot of constituencies happy, it's a lot easier to run things that work than to run things that don't, even though sometimes running things that don't is where you get the most learning, and it's where you build the next 10 years. So I don't think we're perfect at this, and this to me is one of my biggest challenges as CEO, is to embed more courage in our culture. That goal of connected commerce, of enabling entrepreneurship, of supporting people, and really in many ways solving a challenge that tech presents, which is income inequality, pulling the small guy up and allowing them to compete, is for me why I want to do this job. It's for me why I care about eBay winning really deeply. It's very easy to reduce a company to its financial metrics, and financial metrics are very important. We're running a business here. But I do think that the impact metrics, how many people's lives do we touch? How many people buy things on eBay? How many people sell things on eBay? How many people support their families on eBay? That's also really important. And I don't think it's just important for social good. I ultimately think that the impact you have on the world is in part how strong your business is. If you have a very light touch, you can be disrupted. If you're deeply embedded in the lives of hundreds of millions of people, it's harder to disrupt you. What's really exciting about tech is the bleeding edge of both art and science. I think that for companies that are building great experiences like we're trying to do, we're pushing the limits of what machines can do, and that will continue to move out. We're using machine learning, and we're using algorithms, and we're using big data. But actually, at the very edge, it's also about human beings that make it work. We have curators now for the first time in the company. We can push the experience so far, but the eBay homepage every day is a combination of what the machines tell us to put there and human beings in San Jose, New York, London, Berlin, and Sydney that say, you know, the zeitgeist is it's the holiday season and people are buying these Star Wars toys, so we ought to be showing this type of stuff. Global commerce leader.